Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. In this video, I'd like to talk about a video that I watched on YouTube a few months ago, on September 20th, 2016, where they were playing. This guy showed a video with the video saying Trump April 26th. At the time, people were talking about Trump will go 26. Some people thought that he'd be assassinated on the 26th and all of that, but let me play it and then you'll hear it. Note that on the 26th of April was a future date because back in September 2016, Trump was not even he was not even president at that time. But if we look from that time to now, whatever this was about actually seems to be a lot more clearer. We have rumors of war, going to war with North Korea. We know that he just not too long ago, bombed Syria without even doing any investigation. And if there is any time that war actually will be broken out, we know that that normally happens under a Republican president and not really a Democrat per se. But the major wars come under these Republican president. So I watched this video on YouTube. It's called Gotham Shield or something like that, where they were doing some kind of nuclear explosion simulation and power outage simulation in New York, Washington, and also California. And you also see that these videos that these things actually did happen this past weekend, and they, some of the sites are saying that these places been hacked and all kind of stuff. But it's no telling exactly what's going to be happening. I watched this movie called The Crash. It's a movie that came out this year in January. I could only find it on using my Kodi, I think 123 movie or Exodus, one of the two, I can't remember. But this movie shows that the stock market is going to crash, and it gave a specific date in November, and it was the Federal Reserve that was actually behind it, using hackers to create a situation where the stock market had been hacked, and I guess that's the way that they redistributed the wealth among themselves and among the world. But this movie is called The Crash. You could watch it, but anyway, this Trump April 26th thing, if we look in the news, like I said, recently we had rhetorics with war with North Korea, and we also see there's also news out there that there are tanks over there by the Oroville Dam, supposedly to prevent America from being hit by some terrorist threat or something like that. And we also know that the IMF met this weekend on the 21st and the 22nd to discuss policies when it comes in regard with the US dollar and it being a world reserve currency. We also had the French election. We started today, and they're going to go all the way into to May. And we also have what I just read in a newspaper back home is that we have Brexit #2, where Miss May is saying that they're going to have elections on June 8th. So here it is. We have all of this stuff that is happening this past weekend. And this video from back in September 2016 is talking about Trump April 26th. Now this could have significant impact, or it could have nothing. It could be nothing. But nevertheless, that was broadcast on 16:30 a.m. a radio station in New Jersey. And by the way, the guy who actually did this video when he was driving, his video seems to be removed from YouTube for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, I wanted to share that. So this week, we have the Trump administration begins quiet preparation for the government shutdown. And we have the Office of Management and Budget has begun to coordinate with government agencies to plan for possible shutdown. While we do not expect a lapse, prudence and common sense require routine assessments will be made, according to the OMB director, Mick Mulvaney. So Mick Mulvaney is saying that they have actually started the process of preparation in case the government shut down. Now, if you could remember, under the Reagan administration, the director of Office of Management and Budget, his name is David Stockman. So here it is. David Stockman, former director of the Office of Budget Management and Budget. David Allen Stockman is a former businessman and U.S. politician who served as a Republican U.S. representative from the state of Michigan and as the director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Ronald Reagan. So here it is. David Stockman has an article that he calls Donald Trump's Big Fat Ugly Bubble is Ready to Pop. And in this article, he goes on to say how Trump is the great disruptor, and that all the money that they pumped into the stock market because Donald Trump won, really and truly the market actually tanked the day before, but they created this lie and meme called Trumpflation and caused the market to rise to extreme levels and sucker in a lot of people to come in there and buy stocks at the peak of the market while the investors actually are dumping their stocks. So I just want to read a little bit of what Mr. Stockman has to say. He said there have been numerous eruptions of irrational exuberance since Alan Greenspan launched the modern era of monetary central planning in response to the 25% crash of the stock market in 1987 October. But for my money, the Trump-omania since the wee hours of election night is the greatest folly of all. And that's the Trumpflation meme that Wall Street actually has. And the truth is they didn't want Donald Trump to win because they consider him to be an unpredictable person. That's because Donald Trump is destined to be history's great disruptor, not the 11th-hour savior of the mutant financial system and giant bubbles that have been generated by our Wall Street/Washington rulers over the past 3 decades. The latter is a product of massive financial asset inflation fueled by the Fed's cheap debt, falsified financial prices, and tidal wave of Wall Street speculation they have induced. And by the way, I think either Merrill Lynch or one of those brokerage companies said that their accounts has been increased by 44%. And if you go back and you look at every one of these stock market crashes in 2000, 2008, 7 and 8, 1987, you go back to 1973, you're going to realize that the brokerage accounts have been increased significantly right before. I remember China, when they crashed in 2015, you had basically school teachers, people were quitting their jobs and going into the stock market and speculating. And that market tanked. It almost got cut in half from the level that it was. And a lot of people lost a lot of money, and they basically were wiped out when that market crashed. So here we have the similar situation right here in America, where people actually are opening trading accounts and trading this market at the highest peaking level, while those with money, the billionaires, are saying it's time to get out of the stock market. So I wanted to just share that with you. So, but the Fed and its convoy of central bank imitators around the world is finally out of dry powder. If it resumes quantitative easing QE preemptively to thwart the now incipient recession, it will generate a panic sell-off, stoking fears in the casino that it knows something the gamblers don't. Likewise, if it even hints at reversing course towards sub-zero interest rates, it will bring the aroused population of flyover America, which elected Donald Trump, descending upon the imperial city with torches and pitchforks. The savers and retirees of America have already been so severely savaged by 96 months of zero interest rate, or ZIRP, that they are not about to take it anymore and have their savings flat out confiscated by the elitist fools who inhabit Eccles building. In short, after having impaled itself on zero bound and hideously bloating its balance sheet from 900 billion to 4.4 trillion since the Lehman event in September 2008, the Fed has no capacity whatsoever to forestall an oncoming recession or reflate the economy and financial market once it begins. Now, if you recall back in 2008, most of the crashes, they start in the summer when people are on vacation. And the stock market right now is already showing you signs. If you look at a chart, a 10-year chart of the Dow Jones Industrial or the S&P, you're going to see that it's rounding on the top. And that means that it's putting in lower highs. And that's the same thing happened in 2000 and 2007, 2008 also. It begins rounding at the top. And then you see it get a little jump right back up, and then boom, it shoots down right around the summertime. So there's a old analogy says sell in May and go away. Well, we're coming up in May now, and we're going to see if that actually holds true, because there's supposed to be like a little rally which started last week and pushes you into May. And we all know when May Day is, March the 5th. So May Day is a day when, they let you know sell in May and go away. But anyway, and come back in October when the market's supposed to be sober. But the truth is markets crash in October too. The market should currently be in panic retreat because it is inconceivable that the Donald will appoint to the Fed even more aggressive money pumpers than the paralyzed posse currently in command, led by clueless Janet Yellen. But in one of the most ludicrous stick saves ever confected in the bowels of Wall Street, the day traders and robo-machines have been induced to slam the buy button on the theory so preposterous that the CNBC chief circus barker Jim Cramer could not have invented it. That is, the notion that Donald Trump is the second coming of Ronald Reagan and that a huge deficit fuel stimulus is just around the corner is just plain nuts. There will be no such things. So here it is. You got Dick Mulvaney, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, is preparing for a government shutdown. And you have the man who been in office before under Reagan telling you that this meme that they're trying to sell us, that Donald Trump is the second coming of Ronald Reagan, is a big lie. First of all, people will be stupid to believe that Donald Trump is the second coming of Ronald Reagan when Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan is two different people. For example, the Bible uses the second coming of Christ. Well, put it like that. People use the second coming of Christ. So let me don't even say the Bible says the second coming of Christ. People use that analogy. But Christ ain't coming back as being somebody else. He's coming back as himself. So if somebody used the analogy that another person is going to be the second coming of another person, that in itself should give you the clue that that's a big lie. So they're trying to sell you something that's not even possible. And the fact that they believe that Donald Trump is the second coming of Ronald Reagan, that alone shows you that Donald Trump himself don't even have a clue of what he's doing. Nevertheless, it says, Trumpomania is the greatest eruption of irrational exuberance, yet because it occurred in the wake of an election outcome that is a repudiation of the very regime of bubble finance from which it took flight. Donald Trump's shocking election victory was in fact due to the fact that the nation's economic prospects and future growth potential has dimmed dramatically since 1987. I could sum this up in another word. America has reached to the point of no return. They gave you two candidates, one of them so weak that the only thing that actually gives him the opportunity to actually be in office is the fact that he was popular and he has money. He has his own money. And the next one, she basically is a money-hungry, whatever you want to call her, murderer actually, because she went ahead and laughed at Gaddafi being killed. He came, he saw, he died. You know how it was. Anyway, but this is what America has come to. America has come to the point where, they got show business for ugly people. The best two candidates are actually, in a sense, the worst two. And people go out and they pick the lesser of two evil, like as if evil is not evil. Believe me, evil is evil. There's no in between. You know what I mean? You either rich or you poor. There ain't no in between. Talk about the middle class. You know middle class. You underclass. But nevertheless, that's what they tell us. Since the Greenspan era bubble finance began in October 1987, the value of corporate equities owned by households has soared from 1.8 trillion to nearly 15 trillion, representing a 7.5% annual gain. So the value of corporate equities owned by household. So now the amount of stocks and stuff is actually owned more by the people than the people who actually issue them. That means that equity values have increased 65% faster than the 4.5% annual gain in GDP during the same 29-year period. There's a word for that sort of imbalance. It's called unsustainable. Does anyone with a pair of brain cells to rub together think it can last forever or last much longer? But the greatest headwind Trump faces is his wildly inconsistent and irresponsible fiscal program. It will not result in a smooth handoff, the stimulus baton from the Fed to fiscal policy and the vaunted Trump stimulus as Wall Street so blithely expect. Instead, it will actually produce a political conflagration and fiscal bloodbath like the Imperial City has never before witnessed. Trump's already facing congressional opposition to his spending plans, and inauguration day is still 2 weeks off. Consequently, the current extreme stock market euphoria will give way to its opposite as the casino gamblers come to recognize that the jig is up, or the game of musical chair is over. With the debt ceiling holiday bomb ticket towards its March 15 ignition date, meaning that's when it started, the message from the Beltway will become increasingly cacophonous and disconcerting. So in other words, whatever message they got when the debt ceiling expired and they know the consequences of it, basically it's going to go through an amplification process. Namely, it will become obvious there is no known combination of congressional votes, Republican, Democrat, or mixed, that the Trump White House will be able to marshal on behalf of deep corporate and personal tax cut, a major defense spending increase, a huge infrastructure program, more money for veterans, border control, a Mexican wall, domestic law enforcement, homeland security, while giving a free pass to the giant retirement entitlement program, Social Security and Medicare at 1.6 trillion per year. That's because the current public debt is nearly 20 trillion. The public debt of nearly 20 trillion will grow by 1 trillion per year, upwards of 25 trillion during the Great Disruptor's first term. And that's before one dime of the Bollywood Trump stimulus is added to the equation. To add 500 billion per year or more of additional rent to the equation is beyond the pale. That's true even for the spenders who inhabit the Imperial City, especially after they realized the bond vigilantes who kept careful watch of federal spending were not extinguished back in 1994, but only went into long hibernation that is now over as the era of central bank money printing has reached its endgame. So unless Donald Trump can accomplish the seeming impossible, get Congress to raise the debt ceiling on March 15 to 25 trillion or higher in one fell swoop, its entire and largely misbegotten fiscal stimulus program will be stillborn. And he uses the date of March 15 because, it's kind of like you get retrograde. That's the day that it expired. So he goes back to that date, just to let you know. It will simply disappear amidst endless budget battles and the debt ceiling showdown / government shutdowns, which will make the budgetary fireworks of August 2011 look like a Sunday school picnic in comparison. And if you remember, in August 2011, we had a shutdown, and the U.S. was downgraded by the Standard & Poor's. And that same time, gold actually went up to $1,928 an ounce. And they had to stop gold from going parabolic because that's the canary in the coal mine. It lets people know it's time to get out of the mine because guess what? The carbon dioxide is too hot. If you see the canary dead or heading for the exit, you head for the exit. If the canary starts to choke up inside of there, then guess what? You're going to die. So they had to stop gold from really and truly be going parabolic. And what did they come up with? The Swiss pegging their currency to the dying euro, and that causes the gold price to be smashed. Didn't make any sense to me. Still don't make no sense now, but that's what they did. And that gets us back to the whole idea that the Reagan boom of 1984 can be replicated from a cold start at the very end of a long in the teeth business cycle. The fact is, the original event was not on the supply side miracle in the slightest. It was a borrow and spend erupting that depended upon a massive expansion of the federal deficit from 2% of GDP under the outgoing Carter budget to an unprecedented 5 to 6% of GDP during the Gipper's first term. And the Gipper is talking about Reagan. Even then, the celebrated Morning in America boom during 1983-84 was not remotely what it is cracked up to be by Trump's agent posse of supply-siders like Stephen Moore and Larry Kudlow. During the 6 quarters of 1983 through the quarter 2 of 1984, fully 27% of the real GDP growth of 7.8% was accounted for by a huge but one-time restocking of business inventories after they had been flushed out of the system by Volcker's 20% interest rate medicine during the 1980-1982 battle against inflation. So Volcker had to raise the interest rate to 20% to try to quell the inflation. So people were thinking in a sense that they were actually getting rich, but the truth is inflation was going up and it's taking everything with it. So that in itself shows you what's going on. I'm going to skip down and I'm going to read this. Self-evidently, after 8 years of ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, mortgage rates will now be rising, not falling, as far as the eye can see. In fact, the Fed's 100 basis point interest rate increase since last summer's lows have already put a crimp in the tepid rate of residential housing activity as represented by new contract signing and new permits, meaning that the higher the interest rate is, the less people are going to want to buy. Finally, when the Reagan boom began, the stock market price or PE, price per earning per share ratio, which is PE ratio, had been hammered down into single digits by the prior decade of soaring inflation. So it had nowhere to go except up. The very opposite of today's 25 times multiple, and the average is 16, which flirts with PE ratios normally associated with those preceding violent stock market crashes. In other words, 25% is bubble territory. In short, the greatest suckers rally in history is now nearly over, and the Wall Street casino is about to feel the full brunt of the great disruptor, and one of an altogether different kind than that invented by the Wall Street brokers on election night, which actually drove the market to these heights. As a contract Kramer might say, there will never be better time to sell. Now, I want to show some charts that he have. This is a chart says market capitalization of S&P versus US GDP. Notice in 2000, 2001, what happened? We peaked at 1.2, and then boom, we had the crash. Bush came in, and he said, everybody in America deserve to get a house. I think every American should have their own home. Created a housing boom by printing money, and then boom, we went up here. What happened in 2007, 2008? We had the housing bubble. What happened? Boom, it popped. Then here comes quantitative easing by Mr. Ben Bernanke. He started and gave Janet Yellen the baton, I think in 2012 or something like that. But nevertheless, he came in and he started printing money, zero interest rate policy. And then we had a little hiccup in 2015 when China started to crash. And notice in 2000, 2001, we had a mini crash in 1997, 1998 in Japan that started it. China starts it this time. We already almost at 1.2. We're more like 1.1. So we're already up here, which had one of the most violent crash in history. And here it is. We're higher than in 2008. And now we're in the everything bubble territory. So when this thing starts to roll over, it's going to be the same thing. Boom, a straight down crash for the next several months. So I wanted to share that chart by Mr. Stockman. Here's another one, the distribution of wealth in the U.S. 1917 to 2015. If we go back even to 1973, when the dollar came off with the gold standard, we see that it was 7% for those of the 1%, top 1%, top 0.1%, sorry, and the bottom 90. So here it is in 1981, right before the inflation, those who were in the bottom 90, they were 30%, 36%. You know why? Because the price of gold shot up all the way to 850. So you could have take maybe something like 8 ounces of gold or something like that and buy a house. You know, so buying a house with silver was actually even better if you had a lot of silver. And then what happened? From that point on, when Reagan came in and all them interest rate and stuff, and also the interest rate went up by Volcker, so that gives the people them savings. You know, you were getting a lot of money back for saving money also. So they became wealthy, true wealth. Then what happened? Inflation came in, and these cronies started to devalue the currency, and look what happened. Production fell off, and guess what? Those in the 90% are actually down below 25%. They're actually almost the same point where the rich has basically gone from 7%, the top 0.1, all the way. So the top 90% are as together are as rich as the top 0.1%. So 90% of us basically makes up the top 0.1%. And these top 0.1% makes the rules. So that's another chart. Here's another one. Central banks have bought $1 trillion in assets year to date. So if we go back a year from today, back in 2016 to now, central banks have bought $1 trillion in assets. And assets meaning many of them has actually bought houses and all of that stuff, and bonds and that kind of stuff. Some of the governments actually bought stock, like in Japan. They support their own stock market. So $1 trillion year to date. That's crazy, and it's unsustainable. And this is another one. The greatest financial fraud in history. 14.6 trillion conjured from thin air. Let me see if I find that chart. Let me see if I could pull that one up. Ooh, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that. Let me see if that's the same one that I have over here. Oh yeah, that's the same one that I pulled up there. So that's the central banks have what? 1 trillion in asset. And the fact that the banks are buying their own collateral, the things that they issue, their own stocks, or their own mortgages, their own bonds. How can you be buying your own assets? You're supposed to be selling it to someone, and if you do decide to buy them back, at least you'll be paying the people who you borrow the money from. But that's not what they're doing. These guys are committing fraud. That's what they're doing. So the Trump administration, and I want to read what Donald Trump said. He said, I think we're in good shape. President Trump said when asked about the possibility of a shutdown. Would he say anything different? Would a liar-in-chief, just like Obama and the rest of them, say anything different? Oh, Mr. Bush. Right, we got Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bomb them. Right, lead the people to war. Over 1 million people dead. And then later on, no weapons over here. No weapons over there. That's Mr. Bush for you. Then here comes Mr. Obama for 8 years. Yes, you can. We're going to give you change you can believe in. Isn't that right, wifey? So here we got President Obama giving you change you could believe in. Pocket change, that is. You know. Many people are broker than it was. And then we got Donald Trump. Let's make America great again. How are you going to make America great again when you got immorality all over the place? America got to be great again when America go back to the principles that set up, that made America great. Stealing the history of the Israelites, which call the Bible, and using it to actually establish a government that actually was run by people who had a semblance that they did believe in some form of a godly structure. Today, America don't have that. They promote immorality, and they want to make America great again. You can't make America great again with all those pedophiles in Washington. It ain't happening. So Mr. Trump said, and that's the Trump card that they use to sucker the people one last time. We got to get them people. So they had that Trump card. Donald Trump came in, round up everybody, and he said, hey, let's make America great again. And guess what? The people went along. Yeah, this is what's going to happen. And when you look at him now, what you get? You get more of the same. Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss. But I wanted to share these articles with you and show you something else. Notice this week is the week, according to that same article, that Congress, let me read it, with the Senate reconvening on Monday and the House of Representatives on Tuesday after a 2 weeks recess, lawmakers will have only 4 days to pass a spending package to keep the government open beyond April 28, which is Friday. When funding expires for numerous federal programs, I think we want to keep the government open, Trump said on Thursday, adding he thinks Congress can pass the funding legislation and perhaps also a revamped health care bill. Now, why would this crony, this idiot, say, I think we want to keep the government open? Isn't these morons supposed to be running the country? This is to tell you the brains of the president that you actually voted into power. People go to the polls like sheep, vote for lesser of two evil, and this is what they get. You know, they get the lesser of two evil in a reality show with show business for ugly people. So he thinks that he wants to keep the government open. That's what he thinks, which makes no sense. So looking at this, you got the House and you got the Senate. And you see that they're supposed to come back and be in office here. Now, I'm not sure whether they're going to be in office or not, because politicians coming back from vacation is just like politicians on vacation. Before they get anything done, they got to start telling you for the rest 2-3 weeks how good their vacation was. So I know for a fact ain't nothing going to get done, at least not under this administration, because you got the left and you got the right, and both of them creating an issue or scenario. Besides, if the government shut down, that will be their reason to actually raise the debt ceiling. If they go to war on the 26th, or something in America happens this week due to a false flag, then the truth is they got a reason to print more money. And I think that's the excuse that they're looking for. And with that, I'm going to leave you with this last part of this video. I'm going to play it again. So I'm going to leave you with that just in case something happened on April 26th. And Mr. Stockman has this picture looking like Donald Trump. He looked like one of the Clump, like he's at the Clump's table and he just farted and he's saying, you know, I didn't do it, you know. And he's looking around at everybody. Look at their face, bloated, look like he's either holding a fart or he already done let it go. But whatever it is, hopefully he don't let go nothing nuclear on April 26th that cause our life to be flipped upside down. And which that, I'd like to say, if you like this video, please subscribe. Please share it. You know, give me a thumbs up. And I hope that you all take care of your family and be safe out there. I'm going to leave the link to these 2 articles right down here below this video. Shalom, shalom.